eurerseits?
And let's open with prayer.
Lasst uns mit Gebet anfangen.
Dear Heavenly Father,
Lieber himmlischer Vater,
we thank you that we can come here again together to study your word.
wir danken dir, dass wir hier wieder zusammenkommen können, um dein Wort zu studieren.
And I ask for your presence and for your blessings during this hour of worship.
Und ich bitte um deine Gegenwart und um deine Segnungen während dieser Stunde des Studiums, des Anbetens.
Please remind Lord of all the things he studied,
Und bitte erinnere unsere Brüder Lorenz an all das, was wir studiert haben.
and I pray that you would also please help us to pay attention and to strive to understand these things.
Und bitte hilft uns, aufmerksam zu sein und dass wir uns anstrengen, diese Sachen zu verstehen.
In Jesus' name,
In Jesu Namen. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. As Sister White says, the books in Daniel and Revelation are one book,
So wie Ellen White sagt, die Bücher von Daniel und der Offenbarung sind ein Buch.
and Brother Mark is now spending some time to look at the book of Revelation.
Und Bruder Mark verbringt einige Zeit jetzt, das Buch des Offenbarungs anzuschauen.
So I thought I can just do the complementary book of Daniel.
So, ich dachte, ich werde so das Complementary, das komplementäre Buch des Daniel studieren.
Yes. Okay, so and therefore let's go to Daniel chapter 1 in our Bibles.
So, lasst uns in unseren Bibeln zu Daniel Kapitel 1 gehen.
And just for the sake of reminding ourselves of what is written there, we can read through this chapter.
Und nur, dass wir uns erinnern, was hier geschrieben ist, lasst uns diesen Kapitel durchlesen.
And then we can begin placing it on the line.
Und dann können wir anfangen, das auf der Linie zu markieren.
Okay. So I will begin with the first 3 verses and then 3 verses per person.
Und ich lese die ersten 3 Versen und dann können wir jeweils pro Person die 3 weiteren Versen lesen.
It says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. Okay, verse 4.
Yes, Vers 4.
You can just keep it in English. Let's do Jennifer.
Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs.
And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your soul? Then shall they make me a danger my head to the king. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, Put thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us both to eat and water to drink.
Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this manner, and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days their countenances appeared fairer and fairer in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat.
Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them clothes. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now, at the end of the days, that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar.
And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus.
Okay, thank you. So, then let's begin in verse 1.
So lasst uns in Vers 1 anfangen.
And it says, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. So what can we see here? What did take place?
So was können wir hier sehen? Was ist hier stattgefunden?
Parallel to Cestius.
Yes, parallel to Cestius, right?
Parallel zur Cestius.
Because Babylon, the king of the north, comes now and besieges Jerusalem.
Babylon, der König des Nordens, kommt und belagert Jerusalem.
And where do we mark Cestius on the line?
Und wo markieren wir Cestius auf der Linie?
It's written there.
Das ist bereits da geschrieben.
Okay, here at the Sunday.
So hier am Sonntagsgesetz.
So we have here now Cestius or Jehoiakim besieging now Jerusalem.
So hier haben wir Cestius oder in diesem Fall Joachim.
No.
Thank you. Nebuchadnezzar besieging Jehoiakim.
So hier ist der Cestius oder in diesem Fall Nebukadnezar, der Jerusalem belagert.
And Jehoiakim was then taken captive. And what does it mark? What time prophecy began there?
Und Joachim ist gefangen genommen. Und was markiert das? Welche Zeitprophezeiung fängt hier an?
70 years in Babylon, right?
70 Jahre Gefangenschaft in Babel.
Which is a parallel to the 1260.
Das ist eine Parallele zur 1260.
Okay. Marks this time of the Sunday law crisis.
Das markiert diese Zeit des Sonntagsgesetzkrise.
Okay. And when we and then he took part of the vessels into Babylon also, and now we can read verses 3 and 4.
So, einige der Gefäße zu Babylon mitgenommen und jetzt können wir die Verse 3 und 4 lesen.
And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favoured and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning of the tongue and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Okay, so how were the children to be?
So, wie sollten diese Kinder werden?
No, how were they to be when they were taken?
Without blemish.
Without
Wie
blemish.
sollten sie sein, wenn sie gefangen genommen waren?
They were
Yes.
from the king's seed also.
Yes, they were also from the king's seed.
So, die sollen ohne Makel sein und auch von königlicher Blutlinie.
Abraham's seed.
Yes.
So, der Same Abrahams.
So just keep your finger here in Daniel 1,
So, haltet den Platz hier in Daniel 1
and let's go to Job.
und lasst uns
Chapter one.
der Buch Hiob Kapitel 1 gehen.
And let's read verse 1.
Und Vers 1.
It says, there was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, And that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. So, we read about children without blemish,
So, wir haben in Daniel über Kinder ohne Makel gelesen.
and here we read about Job, who was perfect and upright.
Und hier lesen wir über Hiob, der perfekt und aufrichtig war.
Okay, and then we understand Satan comes and begins to test him.
Und wir verstehen in dieser Geschichte, Satan kommt und fängt an, ihn zu prüfen.
So, what do we understand? What do these two tests mark?
So, was verstehen wir, was markieren diese zwei Tests?
Sunday law test, right?
Der
Two
Sonntagsgesetz.
phases of the Sunday law crisis.
Die zwei Phasen der Sonntagsgesetzkrise.
First, all your goods and worldly belongings
Zuerst
and
all deine
relationships,
Gütern und weltlichen Besitz und deine Beziehungen
and then your own life also. Right?
und danach deine eigenen Leben noch dazu.
Okay, let's go back to Daniel. Let's go now to Daniel chapter 6.
So, lass uns zurück zu Daniel. Und jetzt machen wir Daniel 6 auf.
And let's read verses 1 to 5.
Und wir lesen die Versen 1 bis 5.
And we want to especially look at verse 4.
Und wir wollen ganz besonders Vers 4 bemerken.
And I think in German it's already 2 to 6, the verse.
Ich glaube in Deutsch, das sind die Versen 2 bis 6 sogar.
Okay, it says, It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom. And over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. Okay, so Daniel 6, about which Sunday law does it speak?
So, Daniel 6, über welches Sonntagsgesetz spricht es hier?
The second.
Second, right?
Das zweite.
Everybody understands this?
Kann jeder verstehen, warum?
Okay,
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
no problem. So, because how is Darius? What kind of king is he?
So, wie ist Darius? Was für ein König ist er?
Is he like, does he want to destroy Daniel?
So, möchte er Daniel zerstören?
No, right?
Nein,
He wants to save him.
er möchte ihn retten.
Okay, and in the chapter before that,
In der Kapitel hier zuvor,
it speaks about Belshazzar, right?
spricht hier über Belshazzar.
Okay.
And Belshazzar, he was an evil king, right?
Belshazzar war ein böses König.
But what Sunday law is he illustrating?
Aber welches Sonntagsgesetz stellt er dar?
The second,
Der
yes?
zweite.
Yes.
And why again?
Warum wohl?
Because his father,
Yes. Because it's,
Nebuchadnezzar,
Yes, because he got reminded of what happened to his father in the first Sunday law,
Yes.
right?
Weil er würde erinnert, was mit seinem Vater geschehen ist im ersten
So
Sonntagsgesetz.
Nebuchadnezzar in the first Sunday law, at the end, what happens to him?
So, Nebukadnezar, bei den ersten Sonntagsgesetz am Ende, was geschieht mit ihm?
he gets hung on the dust.
Yes, gets cut down, right?
Er wird abgehauen,
For
diesen Baum,
7 years,
für 7 Jahre.
and then
he sets up.
he gets converted,
Und
right?
dann wird er bekehrt.
Okay, so he's a good king then.
Er ist jetzt ein gutes
Well,
König.
he's actually already a good king here because he sets Daniel and that up over the kingdom.
You mean at the beginning?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what he's doing here in chapter 6.
Yes.
Also,
Yes, but I mean, he's converted here at the end. Right?
aber er
So
wird
after
hier
the
am
7
Ende
years.
bekehrt.
So he does something good at the beginning, that's true.
Er
Well,
tut was Gutes am Anfang, das ist wohl
He's
wahr.
humbled in the dust there at the end. He's just going through a period now of leading him to this, where he understands everything. I mean, look, you read here, it says, like Darius, verse 1, it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes. That's the same place where Nebuchadnezzar did it in
Yes.
Daniel.
Oh, that's true. But it's only that he's not converted there. It's, because Daniel 4 said it was at the end of the 7 years that he then acknowledged God to be the ruler. So, let's just go there quickly. Let's go to Daniel 4.
Gehen wir schnell zu Daniel 4.
Let's read verse 34.
Vers 34.
And then in German, I think it's verse 31 or so.
Vers 31 im Deutsch.
If you've read there, just read Daniel 2:47.
So let's read first this one. So and at the end of the days, I Nebuchadnezzar lifted up mine eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me, and I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. So this was when his understanding returned. He basically now gave God the glory.
So hier ist sein Verstand ihm zurückgekehrt und er hat Gott die Ehre gegeben.
And this was at the end of the 7 years.
War am Ende von diesen 7 Jahren.
So, but now wait, Daniel 2 verse.
Because Daniel,
Awesome.
this 7 years is a parallel to the 7 years in Genesis 41. Right?
7 good years. Yes.
Yes.
Diese 7 Jahre hier in Daniel ist eine Parallel zu die 7 gute Jahren in 1. Buch Mose 41.
So you have to look at the state of the Pharaoh there in Genesis 41, but also in Daniel 2 in verse 47.
Also auch den Zustand des Pharaos in 1. Buch Mose 41 denn anschauen, aber auch hier in Daniel 2, Vers 47.
Okay.
That verse, begin verse 46, it says,
Vers 46 fängt es an.
Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal the secret. It's the same as Genesis 41.
Das ist dasselbe wie 1. Buch Mose 41.
So he's recognizing the God of heaven right there.
So er erkennt den Gott des Himmels an dieser Stelle an.
Yes, I mean the kings definitely do this at this time, right? Like also like Cyrus.
So die Könige tun dieses zu dieser Zeitpunkt, genauso wie Kyros.
But I mean, at least in the story of Daniel 4, it was at the end of the 7 years that he got truly converted. So.
Aber am Ende von Daniel 4 ist es, wo er wahrlich bekehrt wird.
At the end of the 7 years.
Am Ende von diesen 7 Jahren.
Okay. So, when we go back to Daniel 6,
So wenn wir jetzt zurück zu Daniel 6 gehen,
so because at the end of the first Sunday law,
denn am Ende des ersten Sonntagsgesetzes,
so what does Nebuchadnezzar do
was tut Nebukadnezar
with God's people?
mit Gottes Volk?
He sets them up over the kingdom.
Yes, he sets them up.
Er
Right?
setzt sie über das Königreich auf.
God's people. Exalted.
So, Gottes Volk wird erhöht.
We have it in Daniel 3 with the 3 Hebrew friends,
So, wir haben das in Daniel 3 mit die 3 hebräischen Freunde.
or in Daniel 2 with Daniel himself who got exalted.
Oder sogar in Daniel 2 mit Daniel selbst, der erhöht würde.
Okay. And this is what is mentioned here in Daniel 6
Und das ist, was hier in Daniel 6 erwähnt wird,
in verse 1.
in Vers 1.
Because what did Darius do to Daniel?
Dann was tat den Darius Daniel an?
In verse 1 and 2 it says, It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. Okay, so what happens to Daniel here?
So, was geschieht hier mit Daniel?
Yes, he's now exalted, right?
Er wird erhöht.
So this would be this time here,
Das wäre hier an diesem Zeitpunkt,
where God's people get exalted,
wo
right?
Gottes Volk erhöht wird.
He
Okay.
becomes the seed. He would be the seed there.
Er wird der Same werden.
Okay. And then it goes on to say,
Sagt weiter,
verse 3 and 4,
die Verse 3 und 4.
Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. So what is in Daniel here?
So, was ist in Daniel an dieser Stelle?
Angel of
Excellent
Revelation
spirit, yes.
So
Okay.
ein souveränes Geist.
Vortrefflicher.
Vortrefflicher
That would
Geist.
be his second birth there, right?
Das wäre denn sein Zweitgeburt.
Yes. And then it says,
Dann sagt es weiter.
Then the presidents and the princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault. For as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. So, in this time, what do the evil men do?
So, in dieser Zeit, was tun diese bösen Männer?
Try to find fault or
Yeah.
conspiring.
They try to look, is there anything they can use to accuse you with?
So, sie schauen, ob es irgendetwas gibt, womit sie Anklage gegen dich bringen können.
But can they find anything in this time?
Aber können sie irgendetwas in dieser Zeit finden?
No.
Nein.
So what do they do?
So, was tun sie?
Verse 5.
Vers 5.
Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. So what do they plan to do now?
So, was schmieden sie jetzt?
Make a law that's
Yeah, to make a new Sunday law, right?
Sie wollen ein Gesetz machen, die wieder Gottes Gesetz ist, nämlich ein neues Sonntagsgesetz.
Okay, so therefore we can see that in this time of peace, they try to find something to accuse you with, but they can't find anything.
So, diese Zeit des Friedens, die suchen nach irgendetwas, was sie gegen dich anbringen können, aber sie können eben nichts finden.
And that's why they bring in again a Sunday law.
Und deswegen bringen sie weiter ein Sonntagsgesetz.
And they deceive here Darius in doing it,
Sie verführen den Darius, indem sie das tun.
but he actually doesn't want to kill.
Aber
Das
er
stimmt.
möchte Gottes Volk eben nicht töten.
So, and so the point I want to make is that you can see that here you have now this perfect character, right?
So, der Punkt, den ich machen möchte, ist, dass hier hast du diese perfekte Charakter.
Okay, so, and therefore when you come here, you still have this perfect character,
Deswegen,
right?
wenn du hier ankommst, du hast diese perfekte Charakter immer noch.
Okay, and this, when you now look at the illustration of 2014 to the civil Sunday law,
So, wenn dies hier 2014 bis zur zivile Sonntagsgesetz darstellen würde,
what do you receive here?
was erhältst du hier?
The first birth, right?
So, der erste Geburt.
Okay, so and what kind of character do you then have?
Und was für einen Charakter hast du denn da?
Also a perfect,
Auch ein
yeah,
perfektes Charakter,
without blemish.
ohne Makel.
And you need now to maintain it
Und du musst es bewahren,
until you come to the Sunday law.
bis du hier zu diesem Sonntagsgesetz
And
kommst.
so there will be people that will still have maintained their perfect character.
So, es werden Menschen geben, die immer noch an dieser Stelle ihre makellosen Charakter aufbewahrt oder aufrecht bewahrt haben.
And this is Job, or in Daniel chapter 1, Daniel and his companions who get taken into captivity.
Das wäre dann Hiob oder Daniel und seine 3 Gefährten, die in der Gefangenschaft genommen würden.
Okay,
Amen.
everybody can follow?
Kann jeder folgen?
So then let's go back to Daniel chapter 1.
So, lasst uns zu Daniel 1 zurückgehen.
And let's read verse 5.
Und wir lesen Vers 5.
And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Okay, so they should be now nourished for this time of the Sunday law. How many years?
So, sie sollen diese Zeit des Sonntagsgesetzes gespeist werden und es war wie viele Jahre?
3 years.
3 Jahre.
from Passover to Passover.
Exactly.
Von Passa zur Passa.
Because it was 3 years from temple cleansing to temple
Also
cleansing.
es war eben 3 Jahre von Tempelreinigung bis zur Tempelreinigung.
So this is a work of cleansing here.
So,
Okay.
dies ist eine Werk des Reinigens.
But what does Satan want to do with
Aber
you
was
at
möchte
the same time?
Satan mit dir zu dieser Zeit tun?
Yeah, he wants to defile you, right?
Er möchte dich verunreinigen.
Because you now had the first birth at the civil Sunday law, and in the Sunday law test, he now wants to bring you down again. Okay?
Du hattest bereits die erste Geburt bei den zivilen Sonntagsgesetz, aber jetzt in diesen Sonntagsgesetzkrise, er möchte dich zum Fall bringen.
And he understands this is only possible by introducing false doctrine into your mind.
Und er weiß, dass dies nur möglich ist, wenn er falsche Lehren in dein Verstand sehen darf.
And that's why when we now jump down to verse 8,
Und deswegen, wenn wir jetzt hier in Daniel 1 zu Vers 8 kommen,
this is what we can read here.
das ist das, was wir hier lesen
Also,
können.
verse 8, he changes the names.
Now we come to this.
Okay.
So, verse 8.
Vers 8.
But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Okay, so here we can see Daniel didn't want to defile his temple.
So, hier können wir sehen, dass Daniel seinen Seelentempel nicht verunreinigen wollte.
Because he understood that this is now actually the time of the temple cleansing and not the time of defiling the temple.
Weil er hat eben verstanden, dass dies der Zeit von Tempelreinigung ist und nicht der Zeit, deinen Tempel zu verunreinigen.
There's never a time to defile the
Also
temple,
es gibt nie eine Zeit, deinen Tempel zu verunreinigen.
but especially not then.
Aber gerade nicht zu dieser Zeit.
Yes.
And it also says about the 145,000 they were not defiled women.
Es sagt auch über die 144.000, dass die nicht von Frauen verunreinigt wurden.
That's it. Okay. So, and now just go back to verses 6 and 7,
So, geht zurück zu die Verse 6 und 7,
because it says here,
wenn es sagt,
Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the princes of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. Okay, so what kind of names do they receive here?
so, was für Namen erhalten sie hier? In Babylon.
Yes, Babylonian names.
Babylonische.
And what is the name illustrating?
Und was stellt ein Name dar?
Character.
Charakter.
Okay, and who is giving them these Babylonian names?
Und wer ist es, der hier diesen babylonischen Namen gibt?
Satan, right?
Das ist Satan,
The Babylonians.
diese Babylonier.
So therefore, what is he? Because just keep your finger here. Let's go to Revelation chapter 14.
So, halte den Platz hier und geht zur Offenbarung 14.
In verse 1.
Und Vers 1.
It says, Revelation 14:1.
Offenbarung 14, Vers 1.
And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So what kind of name do they have?
So, was für einen Namen haben sie?
Father's name, right?
Vaters Namen.
So, and it's the seal of God,
Das
right?
ist den Siegel Gottes.
So when you receive the seal of God, what does it mean?
So, wenn du den Siegel Gottes erhältst, was bedeutet das?
What?
You're like the same character as what was shown to Moses.
Yes?
Du bist derselbe Charakter wie das, was Mose
Yes,
gezeigt
you
hat.
also become a new name. That's
Du
also
erhältst einen
But-
neuen Namen.
a seal is what? When a king places a seal upon something, what does he say with
So,
that?
wenn ein König ein Siegel auf irgendetwas legt, was sagt er damit?
It's a sign of authority, right?
Das ist sein Zeichen der Autorität.
So in this sense, now you belong to God.
So, in diesem Sinne gehörst du Gott an.
When you receive the mark of the beast, you belong to.
Also dem Malzeichen
Satan,
des
right?
Tieres gehörst du Satan an.
Okay, so therefore, right at the beginning of here in Daniel 1,
So, deswegen gerade am Anfang hier in Daniel 1,
when you come to the Sunday law,
wenn du zur Sonntagsgesetz ankommst,
Satan gives you a name change.
Satan verändert deinen Namen.
And so what is he basically saying with that?
Und was möchte er damit sagen?
Yeah, you belong to me,
Du
okay?
gehörst mir an.
And you must now first prove your fidelity to the Lord before he then gives you the seal of God, the name of the Lord on you.
Und du musst deine
Vorhat.
Treue dem Herrn erweisen,
Before you receive the name of the Lord.
also noch bevor du den Namen des Herrn
Before
erhältst.
God gives you a name change.
Noch bevor Gott dir eine Namensänderung
So
gibt.
therefore at the beginning Satan claims you as his property.
So, am Anfang Satan behauptet, dass du sein Besitz sei.
You're sealed by promise from the first one.
Yes, exactly.
Aber du wirst versiegelt durch Verheißung vom
Yes.
ersten bis zum zweiten Geburt.
You need to maintain this promise.
Du musst
Okay.
diese Verheißung durch Glaube aufrechthalten.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what Satan claims, right? If you remain faithful to the Lord, he can claim you as much as he wants.
Es ist letztendlich egal, was Satan mit dir tut, wenn er seinen Anspruch auf dich legt. Wenn du dem Herrn treu bleibst,
Yeah.
es tut nicht zur Sache.
Yeah. He can never really possess you.
Er kann dich nie ins Besitz nehmen.
It's like a false accusation.
Aber es ist wie, diese Namensveränderung ist wie eine falsche Anklage.
He puts the, in the, you know, with these accusations like the dirty garments
So diese
putting on you. He's like, a garment is the character, and the name is the character.
Anklage, diese falsche Namen, die er auf dich tut, dass der Name ist Charakter und diese schmutzige Gewände, die er dir auflegt, stellen auch Charakter dar.
So from the moment that begins, you're getting branded as something, as a troubler, as all these sorts of things.
So
That's really what this name is that you're given.
So von Anfang an, du wirst dargestellt als ein Unruhestifter und all diese verschiedenen Namen, die dir zu Unrecht zuteil kommen.
Yes. And you're basically made out to be that you are actually belong to Satan, but in reality you belong to the Lord.
Es wird so dargestellt, als wenn du Satan angehörst, aber die Realität ist es, dass du Gott gehörst.
So, good. So we can clearly see that Daniel chapter 1 begins here at the son-in-law,
So wir können klar sehen, dass Daniel Kapitel 1 fängt hier zur Sonntagsgesetz an.
and then there's a test about appetite.
Und
Right?
dann gibt es einen Test. Und das Test ist über Appetit.
Okay, so let's go now to our notes
So lass uns jetzt zu den Notizen gehen
and let's read this first quote.
und diese erste Zitat lesen.
From Prophets and Kings 481.2.
Propheten und Könige 481.2.
Everybody there?
Jeder da?
It says, at the very outset of their career, there came to them a decisive test of character. It was provided that they should eat of the food and drink of the wine that came from the king's table. So at the beginning, what came against them?
So, am Anfang, was kam gegen sie an? Test of Appetit.
Yes, the test of character, right?
So, dieser Test deren Charakters.
In this, the king thought to give them an expression of his favor and his solicitude for their welfare. But a provision having been but a portion having been offered to idols, the food from the king's table was consecrated to idolatry, and one partaking of it would be regarded as offering homage to the gods of Babylon. In such homage, loyalty to Jehovah forbade Daniel and his companions to join. Even a mere pretense of eating the food or drinking the wine would be a denial of their faith. To do this would be to array themselves with heathenism and to dishonor the principles of the law of God. Okay, so we can see, as soon as the son-in-law begins,
Wir können sehen, dass sobald der Sonntagsgesetz anfängt,
Satan wants to defile you with this strange doctrine. Okay,
Satan möchte dich mit diesen falschen Lehre verunreinigen.
okay, and what are you not to do?
Und was solltest du nicht tun?
Not to pay homage to the idols, right?
Du sollst diese Götzen nicht Ehrerbietung geben.
Okay, because as soon as you partake of this doctrine, you pay homage to the image of the beast, right? To this golden image.
Sobald dass du Teil dran nimmst an diese falsche Lehre, dann erweist du die Ehre zu dieser falschen Götze, also dieses Standbild.
So in this sense, so the test begins immediately at the son-in-law.
So in diesem Sinne, der Test fängt gerade am Anfang des Sonntagsgesetzes an.
But now let's continue,
Aber lass uns fortsetzen.
because at least to my understanding, the 10 days do not begin there right away. Okay?
So, zumindest wie ich das verstehe, die 10 Tage, die fingen nicht gerade da an.
And I will just give you my reasons, but I'm
Ich
still
gebe
open.
meine Gründe, weshalb ich das so meine.
Okay, let's just go to Daniel 1 verse 9
Gehen wir jetzt zu Daniel 1, Vers 9,
to 12.
die Verse 9 bis 12.
It says, now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Okay, so Daniel, to whom does he go?
So Daniel, zu wem geht er hier?
Melzer.
Yes, to the prince of the eunuchs and to Melzar, right?
So Prinz des Eunuchen und zu Melzer.
So, and they represent, they're representatives of the state, right?
Und die sind also Staatsmachtrepräsentanten.
Okay, so he gets in touch with the state power here.
So er kommt in Kontakt mit den Staatsmächten hier.
Ist Melzer noch der Prince of the Eunuchs? Or are these two?
The two people.
We've had that discussion.
So, and let's read the next quote.
Aber lass uns hier diesen nächsten Zitat lesen.
It says here, under the heading Facing Death.
So, unter dem Titel dem Tod entgegenstehen.
Had Daniel so desired, he might have found in his surroundings a plausible excuse for departing from strictly temperate habits. He might have argued that, dependent as he was on the king's favor and subject to his power, there was no other course for him to pursue than to eat of the king's food and drink of his wine. For should he adhere to the divine teaching, he would offend the king and probably lose his position and his life. Should he disregard the commandment of the Lord, he would retain the favor of the king and secure for himself intellectual advantages and flattering worldly prospects. Okay, so by rejecting the king's decree,
So, indem dass er der königlichen Dekret ablehnt,
what was he now facing?
so gegen was ist er entgegengestanden?
Yeah, he was facing no death, right?
Steht dem Tod gegenüber.
Yes, everybody sees
Amen.
this.
Kann jeder das sehen?
Okay, so, and we understand that,
But you're also facing death from the beginning.
yes, that's true. Okay.
Ja, du trittst den Tod an schon vom Anfang
Because
an.
of the law's right there from the beginning, that if you don't do this, because he's not being personally threatened by the law here, he just knows that there's a law says that he doesn't do this, then
Yes,
face death over it.
that's
Also
true.
dieser Gesetz, der besteht ja schon und solange dass er nicht da entgegensteht, dieses Gesetz geht ihm nicht persönlich an. Er weiß nur, dass es da ist.
It's only that he goes to the state power basically and asks, for this permission. So
Es ist nur, dass er zur Staatsmacht geht und bittet um dieses Ausnahmeerlaubnis oder
so
But what I'm saying is the law's already in place. He already knows that
yes,
prior to him going to the,
yes.
aber er weiß bereits, dass dieses Gesetz schon besteht, ehe er hier in diesem Fall Melzer oder Prinz des
I mean,
Unglücks geht.
And as I said, I'm still open, about these 10 days, but
Also ich bin offen wegen diesen 10 Tagen,
up to now, I only see that you get in touch with the state power at this middle way mark here, but if somebody
ich sehe
else
nur,
can show
dass
me.
du hier in Kontakt mit den Staatsmächten hier an diesen mittleren Wegmarken kommt, aber wenn jemand anderes Licht da hat,
Because when you go to Daniel 2, for instance,
aber wenn du zu Daniel 2 jetzt gehst, zum Beispiel,
there we understand 3 times the magicians come before Nebuchadnezzar, right?
da verstehen wir, dass diese Magiker, diese Zauberer 3-mal vor Nebukadnezar
And then he makes the death decree.
und dann erlässt er diesen Totendekret.
Okay, and now jump down to verse 16.
Und jetzt Vers 16 in Kapitel 2.
Oh, 15 and 16.
15 und 16.
He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, Why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made this thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time and that he would show the king the interpretation. So this was the first time Daniel went in before the king. Right?
Hier ist das erste Mal, wo Daniel vor dem König tritt.
And he's asking now for favor, for time. Right?
Und er bittet jetzt um Zeit, also
Like-
für Gunst.
Like Luther also.
Genauso wie Luther um Zeit bat.
So in this sense, it's like the same pattern that also Daniel 1 asked now here for this favor of these 10 days.
So, das ist auch in diesem Sinne derselbe Muster in Daniel 1, wo er bittet um diesen Gunst, also diesen 10 Tagen.
Okay, so that would be at least my reasons for now to mark it. Okay.
Be reasons to mark it where? Here?
From here.
The 10 days from here?
Yes. This is
Das
where Daniel comes in and asks time. Right?
wäre denn mein Grund, weshalb ich markiere diese 10 Tage von hier an. Denn es ist hier, wo Daniel hineinkommt und um Zeit bittet.
The problem is Lord, verse 5.
Also das Problem
I
damit
get you, but I also made this reasoning before, but in verse 5 it says,
Vers 5 sagt es.
and the king,
Ja,
Daniel 1 verse 5.
nein,
1 verse 5 is it?
Kapitel 1 und Vers 5. So,
And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing 3 years. Now that 3 years starts right from the beginning.
und diese 3 Jahre fängt
Ja.
gleich von Anfang an.
Okay, so, you know, the natural and I know that the 10 days is symbolic and so is the 3 years, but the point is the 3 years of them being appointed this food is right from the beginning.
So die 3 Jahre, wo sie diesen Essenzuteil bekommen, ist gleich von Anfang an da.
Okay, so the difficulty that I would have is how do you justify this period there? Because really this 10 days brings you really near the end, you
So,
know.
wie willst du denn rechtfertigen,
Would you
diese
do that?
Zeitperiode hier, wenn die 10 Tage hier anfängt? Denn letztendlich diese 10 Tage bringt dich zum Ende.
I don't understand it also, but how would you justify that? That's
Also
the
ich verstehe
problem.
das auch nicht, aber meine Frage wäre, wie rechtfertigst du diesen
What were they
Zeitpunkt?
doing in all that
Also
time?
was haben sie diese Zeit getan?
Yes, I mean, I don't know literally whether they
But it has to.
waited for some days, they didn't eat anything or whatever, I don't know. Yeah, but, I mean, you might be right, okay.
Also du magst vielleicht recht haben, ich weiß es nicht.
It's only in these other stories, right, you have also
Yes.
Daniel 3,
Es sind nur diese anderen Geschichten, wie zum Beispiel in
I
Daniel 3.
know, I made all those arguments also, but it's just that this point here, it's like difficult to get around.
Okay, so for now we can just maybe leave this point open. We need to study this out further to really definitely place it.
Für den Moment können wir diesen Punkt einfach beiseite legen, bis wir klare Licht darüber haben und wir wissen genau, wo es zu markieren ist.
Whether it no begins already here, the 10 days, or
Ob es
the
nun mal hier anfängt
here.
oder hier.
Okay. So, yeah, okay. Let's study this out further.
So, lasst uns dies weiter hinaus studieren.
Good. But now let's go back to Daniel 1.
Aber lass uns jetzt zurück zu Daniel 1 gehen.
Everybody sees the dilemma we have, why we would argue it begins right at the beginning or at the midnight cry.
So, jeder kann sehen, der Dilemma, die wir hier haben, ob es nun mal von Anfang an beginnt oder an der Mitternachtsschule.
Can I just give you a parallel proof?
Also einen Parallelbeweis möchte ich geben.
In verse 12,
Und in Vers 12
it uses this expression,
das,
prove thy servants, I beseech thee.
das benutzt dieser Ausdruck, also prüfe dein Dienern, ich bitte.
So when you go to Exodus 16,
Wenn wir zu 2. Buch Mose 16 gehen,
it's also about diet, about the manna.
spricht auch, also das Thema hier ist auch über Ernährung, nämlich das Manna.
And in verse 4,
Und in Vers 4, es ist 2. Buch Mose 16 und Vers 4.
then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or not. And this is this 7-day cycle.
So hier ist derselbe Ausdruck, dass ich sie prüfen mag. Und das hier ist dieser 7-Tages-Zyklus.
So that 7-day cycle, we've looked at this, it's got something in line with this 7 days, or the 7 plagues. that are
Diesen
difficult.
7-Tages-Zyklus haben wir bereits angeschaut. Das ist was parallel hat mit diesen 7 Plagen.
Because you got the 6th day, they get double, 7th day.
Yes.
6. Tag erhalten sie doppelt und dann den 7. Tages.
So I'm just saying, it shows you the same thing, they get improved on what they're eating right from the very beginning.
So hier zeigt es, dass die geprüft werden an das, was sie essen, aber es war genau vom Anfang an.
Yes, yes. I get that.
So, ich sehe das schon.
So it's most likely then it begins really at the Sunday law.
So, es wäre dann wahrscheinlich, dass es hier in Daniel 1 am Sonntagsgesetz diese 10 Tage anfängt.
Okay. Then let's just go with the weight of evidence for now.
So, lasst uns einfach mal mit dem Beweislast mitgehen.
Begins here.
So, fängt eben hier an.
And so let's go now back to Daniel 1.
So, gehen wir zurück zu Daniel 1.
So because they were approved now in verse 12 for 10 days.
Denn sie waren in Vers 12 10 Tage lang geprüft.
And let's begin now, let's continue in verse 13.
Und wir lesen weiter in Vers 13 jetzt.
Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzer took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. So, in verse 16, what can we see here?
So in Vers 16, was können wir hier sehen?
What happened to them?
Was geschah mit sie?
They examined. And,
Oh, yes, during the 10 days they were examined, yes.
Also während der 10 Tage waren sie untersucht,
well, I mean,
And
at
at
the
the
end
end?
of the 10 days.
am Ende des 10 Tages.
Takes away the garments and gives them.
Yes.
Yes, basically they get delivered here, right?
So,
That's
sie
also
werden
why
befreit hier. Das
Yes.
ist gleich wie die schmutzigen Gewände weggenommen.
This is like the end of their investigative judgment.
Yes,
Das
exactly.
ist wie das Ende von deren Untersuchungsgericht.
And you have, but you have a parallel of this in Genesis 41.
Und es gibt eine Parallelstelle hierzu in 1. Buch Mose 41.
Remember that this dilemma, Joseph comes out of the prison
Josef kommt aus dem
and
Gefängnis,
he's given a garment,
ihm ist eine Gewand gegeben.
and then at the end, he's put in this chariot, and this, you see the same thing here, these 2 times.
Und dann am Ende
Yes.
wird er in diesen Streitwagen gesetzt. Und das können wir hier auch sehen, diese 2 Mal.
So first of all, here in verse 16,
So hier in
Mhm.
Vers 16 zum
It says-
Anfang.
thus Melzer took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. So he takes something away
So er nimmt was weg
and gives them something.
und gibt sie
Ja.
aber was anderes.
So it's like take away the filthy garments and I give you the royal garments.
Das ist wie die schmutzige Gewänder wegnehmen und die königlichen Gewänder
Which is-
erhalten.
Because they are now not threatened with this filthy meat anymore.
Weil sie
Okay.
sind jetzt nicht so unter diesen Last oder dieser Bedrohung von diesem unreinen Fleisch.
A lot of rain.
So they're delivered.
So, sie werden befreit, das ist der Spätregen.
Okay. And so when we just would mark it now, let's just mark it here for the first group. Okay.
So, wir markieren das eben hier für die erste Gruppe.
What would be Melzar examining them there?
Yes.
So den Melzer, der sie hier untersucht.
So here they get this pulse to eat.
So,
Okay.
hier am Ende erhalten sie diese Gemüse.
Okay. So, and this is what delivers them.
Das ist das, was sie befreit.
Okay. So, therefore, this 10 days, if we mark it correctly, beginning at the Sunday law, here,
Deswegen diese 10 Tage, wenn wir das auf korrekte Weise markieren, hier am Anfang des Sonntagsgesetzes,
would mark the whole test until
Yes.
it says it is done for you.
das werde der gesamten Test markieren, bis zu dem Punkt, wo er sagt, es ist getan für dich.
10 represents a taste.
Und
Yes,
diese
that's
10 stellt ein Test dar.
that's the 10 Commandments.
Die 10
Okay.
Gebote,
So whether you obey them or not.
ob du sie nun gehorchst oder nicht.
And when you go now to verse 17,
Und jetzt Vers 17.
it says, as for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So, what did Daniel have?
Was hat Daniel hier erhalten?
A lot of rain.
Yes,
Der Spätregen.
it says he had understanding in all visions and dreams.
Sagt,
Right?
dass er hatte Verständnis in alle Visionen und
So
Träume.
keep your finger here in chapter 1.
Haltet den Platz hier, Kapitel 1.
Go to Daniel chapter 10.
Und gehen wir jetzt zu Daniel Kapitel 10.
They will see the same language.
Hier werden wir dieselbe Sprachgebrauch sehen.
Daniel 10 verse 1.
Daniel 10 und Vers 1.
Because we read that Daniel had understanding of the vision.
Wir haben gelesen, dass Daniel hat Verständnis in Visionen.
It says, in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long, and he understood the thing, and had understanding of the vision. So what did Daniel have?
Was hat Daniel?
He had understanding.
Yeah, he had understanding, right?
Er hat Verständnis.
So therefore, he's not at the beginning of the revelation, but at the end of the revelation.
Deswegen
Right?
ist er nicht am Anfang des Offenbarungs, sondern am Ende.
Okay. And then this is basically, how would you call it? Like a prologue
A summary
or a summary.
of
Yes.
what's just happened to him.
Yes.
Which is a summary of what? Daniel 10 is a
Daniel
summary
10,
of
1
Daniel 2.
verse 1 is just a summary
Okay.
of what he's then afterwards describing in the rest of the verse, what happened to him.
Okay, Daniel 10, Vers 1 ist nur eine Zusammenfassung von das, was ihm in den folgenden Versen passiert.
So here you can see, this is the revelation.
Das hier ist der Offenbarung.
And at the end thereof you have now understanding of the vision.
Und am Ende dessen dann hast du Verständnis von der Vision.
He does the same you see the same in Daniel 9,
Du kannst dasselbe in Daniel 9 sehen,
verses 20 to 22.
die Verse 20 bis 22.
Yes, exactly. So let's go there.
Lass uns das anschauen.
So he's confessing his sin in that little portion there,
Also er bekennt seine Sünde hier in diesem kleinen Abschnitt.
which is verse 20.
Das wäre dann Vers 20.
He says, and while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God, yet while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, who I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation, which is the ninth hour.
Also dieser Abend, was auch immer das in Deutsch ist, ist der 9. Stunde.
And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding.
Yes. So here Daniel receives skill and understanding.
Vers
Right?
22, Daniel erhält Verständnis und Skill,
Fähigkeit.
Fähigkeit.
So let's go back to Daniel 1.
So, zurück jetzt zu Daniel 1.
Yeah, verse 17, this is where we can then see that it's at the end of the revelation.
Vers 17, da können wir sehen, dass es eben am Ende von diesen Offenbarungen hier bin.
Let's just read verse 17 once more.
Vers 17, ein weiteres Mal.
It says, as for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Okay, so they obtained now skill and understanding like in Daniel 9, and understanding of the vision like in Daniel 10 verse 1.
So, sie haben Fähigkeit und Verständnis hier erhalten, so wie in Daniel 9. Und sie haben auch Erkenntnis in alle Visionen, so wie in Daniel 10.1.
It's interesting because it says all visions and dreams, because all the books of the Bible meet and end in the Revelation.
Und es sagt, dass er Verständnis hat in alle Visionen und Träumen, denn nämlich alle Visionen der Bibel finden ihre Ende und treffen sich in der Offenbarung eben.
Yeah, yes. And it's also all parables, right?
Und es ist auch alle Gleichnisse,
Because all parables are the secret things.
denn alle Gleichnissen, das sind die geheime Sachen.
Okay, and how many children are they?
So, wie viele Kinder sind sie insgesamt?
4.
4.
Okay. So, when you come here, what do you become?
So, wenn du hier ankommst, was wirst du werden?
For the number 4?
Für die Nummer 4,
Yeah, the 4 cherubims,
so
right?
die 4 Cherubim,
The 4 living beasts
die 4
in the
lebendige Tiere.
Revelation, right? Okay. So, now let's go back to our notes.
So, jetzt zurück zu den Notizen.
And let's just read the next quote, would just confirm what we just looked at here in verse 17.
Lesen wir diese nächste Zitat, das wird bestätigen, was wir hier in Daniel 1, Vers 17 gelesen haben.
It says, "The Lord regarded with approval the firmness and self-denial of the Hebrew youth, and their purity of motive, and his blessing attended them. He gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. The promise was fulfilled. Them that honor me I will honor." So what do they receive here?
So, was erhalten sie hier?
What did they receive?
So, was haben sie erhalten?
Yeah, they received honor, but they received the promise, right?
So, Ehre, ja, wohl, aber sie haben die Verheißung erhalten.
Yeah, so it's when you, in this test, in the final test, hold fast to the promise of God, then you will, at the end, obtain it.
So, dieser finale Test hier, wenn du festhältst an die Verheißung Gottes, am Ende wirst du eben die Verheißung bekommen.
And it says here, as Daniel clung to God with unwavering trust, the spirit of prophetic power came upon him. So, when are you to hold fast to God
Wann sollst
with
du Gott
unwavering trust?
festhalten mit unwankelmutigem Vertrauen?
In the shaking.
In the shaking, right? In the
Der
test.
Sichtung, in diesem Test.
In the whole test, but especially in this final
Das
part.
gesamten Test, aber besonders hier in diesem letzten Teil des Tests.
Okay. And therefore, then the spirit of prophecy came upon him.
Und deswegen ist dieser Geist der Prophezeiung über Daniel gekommen.
And at the end, you become prophet, priest, and judge, right?
Und am Ende wirst du Prophet, Priester und Richter,
This is when the spirit of prophecy now comes upon him.
wenn der Geist der Weissagung über dich kommt.
Okay. Now let's close with the last thoughts.
So, lass uns Schluss machen mit den letzten Gedanken hier.
Let's go now to Daniel 1, verse 18.
Gehen wir zu Daniel 1, Vers 18.
It says, "Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm." Okay, so therefore the end of the 3 years, when they now stand before the king, what does it mark?
So am Ende der 3 Jahren, wo sie vor dem König jetzt stehen, was markiert das?
If it's the end of the 3 years of temple cleansing,
Das ist der Ende der 3 Jahre von Tempelreinigung.
and so what kind of
Close of probation.
what kind of judgment is it?
So, was für ein Gericht ist das?
Yes, the executive, the final review,
Ist
right?
das Ausführung des Gerichtes? Ist der finale
Final
Untersuchung?
review, or for the first group, it's here,
Für
right?
die Untersuchung oder für die erste Gruppe ist es eben hier.
Okay, and I just want to confirm this.
Und ich möchte dies nur bestätigen,
Okay, because they now stand before the king, and what does the king do in verse 20?
weil sie stehen jetzt vor dem König. Und was tut der König hier in Vers 20?
He finds them 10 times better.
Yes, he finds him 10 times better
Findet sie das 10-fach besser,
when he inquires of them, right?
wenn er fragt nach sie
Oder sie befragt.
oder sie befragt hat.
Okay, so let's go to the next quote.
So, lass uns jetzt zu dem nächsten Zitat gehen.
It says, "When the time came for the youth in training to be tested, the Hebrews were examined with other candidates for the service of the kingdom." So now comes the test at the end,
So, jetzt kommt der Test am Ende
and they are examined here.
und sie
Okay.
werden untersucht,
And whether they can be faithful candidates for the kingdom.
ob sie nun treue Kandidaten für den Königreich werden.
So therefore, who's the king in
So-
this illustration?
Wer ist der König in dieser Darstellung?
Christ.
Christ,
Das
right?
ist Christus.
He now looks whether he can now take you into his service or not.
Er schaut, ob er dich in seinen Dienst mit einnehmen kann.
It
oder
says
nicht.
it's a test and an examination
Und es sagt eben, dass es hier eine Untersuchung ist,
and a
ein
test.
Test.
What other candidates would this be?
I mean, all those that appear before the king.
Just
Okay,
a symbol of everybody.
All diejenigen, die vor dem König treten.
so everybody that formerly partook of this training, they will be standing before the king, making. They need to give an account.
So, all diejenigen, die zuvor an diesem Training teilgenommen haben, sie müssen Rechenschaft dafür ablegen.
So all those that entered into the Sunday law test,
All diejenigen, die in den Sonntagsgesetztest hineinkamen,
everybody must at the end prove whether you remain faithful to the Lord or not.
Jeder muss am Ende beweisen, ob du nun dem Herrn treu geblieben bist oder nicht.
And we'll see this. Okay.
Und wir werden das sehen.
Let's go to the next.
Candidates, those with a citizen's race.
Yes. Let's go to the next quote.
Zur nächsten Zitat.
Because in the next quote,
Denn hier in der nächsten Zitat,
she compares now the final review with the grand review.
sie vergleicht hier der finale Untersuchung mit der
Großen.
große Untersuchung.
So the final review is the grand review.
Also der
Okay.
finale Untersuchung ist der große Untersuchung.
She says, "It has been presented to me in clear lines that as a people we are to prepare for a grand and final review of character that will decide our fitness to enter the city of God." So she says grand and final
Groß
review,
und
right?
finale Untersuchung.
Okay. So in this review will decide our fitness to enter into the city.
Und diese Untersuchung wird bestimmen unsere Tüchtigkeit oder Tüchtigkeit in der Stadt hineingehen zu können oder nicht.
Okay, let's go to the next quote.
Nächster Zitat.
It says, yes, no, there it is. It says, "Consider these great and solemn truths that concern us. The plain facts are set before us for a purpose, that we shall not be negligent to prepare for that great grand review." For what review?
Was für eine Untersuchung?
For the great grand review.
Diese große Untersuchung.
In the quote before that, we saw it's the final review. Okay.
Im Zitat zuvor haben wir gesehen, dass es der finale Untersuchung ist.
And she says now, when we come to the great grand review, she says,
Wenn wir da ankommen, sagt sie,
"For those whose names are written in the book of life, it is no judgment at all. Every case has been decided, and all those whose names are not written in the book of life shall be judged according to their works." So when you come to the great grand review or the final review,
so, wenn du hier zu dieser großen oder finale Untersuchung kommst,
just like GR, okay, for grand review.
so GR für große Untersuchung,
And your name is written in the book of life, it's no judgment for you at all.
und wenn dein Name im Buch des Lebens niedergeschrieben ist, dann ist das für dich kein Gericht.
Why?
Warum wohl?
In which judgment is decided whether your name remains in the book of life or not?
So, in welchem Gericht wird es bestimmt, ob dein Name im Buch des Lebens bleibt oder nicht?
In the investigative judgment. Right?
Untersuchungsgericht.
So if you pass the investigative judgment, your name will forever be retained in the book of life.
Bestehst der Untersuchungsgericht, dann wird dein Name für immer in das Buch des Lebens niedergeschrieben bleiben.
So therefore, in the great grand review, nothing will change. Okay.
In der große finale Untersuchung wird sich da nicht für dich ändern.
Okay. Next quote.
Nächster Zitat.
And here you can just see that when you come to the great grand review, the Lord will test you.
Und hier
Okay.
können wir nur sehen, wenn du zu dieser großen oder finale Untersuchung kommst, dass der Herr dich testen wird
With questions.
mit Fragen.
So let's see.
Lass uns schauen.
We are preparing for the future eternal life. Soon there's to be a grand review. So here we have the grand review.
So hier wieder diese große Untersuchung erwähnt,
In which every soul who is seeking to perfect the Christian character must bear the test of God's searching questions. So what is the grand review?
was ist diese große Untersuchung?
It's a
Das
test
ist ein
of
Test.
God's searching questions.
Das ist ein
Okay.
Test von Gottes durchsuchende oder durchschauende Fragen.
And we saw that when the Hebrew boys were now brought before Nebuchadnezzar, he inquired of them. Right?
Und wir gesehen, dass die hebräischen Jungs von Nebukadnezar gebracht wurde. Er hat sie befragt oder nach sie gefragt.
And he tested and examined them, Sister White said.
Er hat sie getestet und untersucht, sagt Ellen White.
Okay. And jump down to the next bold-faced.
Zur nächsten fettgedruckten.
That you should bear the test, that to you shall be spoken the words of approval. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter thou in the joy of thy Lord. So when you bear these searching questions, you will be permitted into the kingdom.
Also wenn du diese durchforschende Fragen aushältst, dann wirst du Zugang in den Königreich
And it
geben.
says, well done, good and faithful servant.
Es sagt, gut gemacht, treu und gute Diener.
And in which parable is this mentioned?
Und in welche Gleichnis wird dies erwähnt?
Matthew 25.
Yes, the talents, right?
die Talenten.
So let's go now to the next quote.
So gehen wir jetzt zum nächsten Zitat.
It says, God will reckon with his servants individually. In the great grand review, the reward given to each will be proportionate to the use made of the talents. Okay, so
Verse 19, he says he comes and reckons with them.
yes. Yeah, let's just go quickly.
Gehen wir schnell dahin.
Luke 19.
Zu Lukas 19.
Let's read verse 15.
Vers 15 lesen wir.
They said the parable of the talents.
Yes, but the parable of the
Yeah, but it's
pounds, yes. I'm just not sure. Okay, Luke 19, verse 15.
Zu Lukas 19, Vers 15.
Says, and it came to pass that when he was returned, having received the kingdom, then he commanded these servants to be called unto him, to whom he had given the money, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. So when does he come and makes this reckoning?
So, wann kommt und macht Rechenschaft oder zieht dich zur Rechenschaft? Also Abrechnung.
After he receives the kingdom. Right?
Nachdem den Königreich erhalten hat.
And it's at the seventh plague we read this morning that he received the kingdom,
Und
right?
am 7. Plage
Or
ist
the
es,
seventh trumpet.
also der 7. Posaune, sogar wie wir heute Morgen gelesen haben, wo der Königreich erhält.
So it's the executive judgment,
Das ist der ausfüllendes Gericht,
the great grand review.
der große und finale Untersuchung.
Okay. Last quote.
Letzter Zitat,
Next quote.
nächster Zitat.
Just read the first bit.
Wir lesen nur diesen ersten Teil.
It says, let the human agent consider the solemn fact that the day of reckoning is just before us, and that we are daily deciding what our eternal destiny shall be. So what day? The day of reckoning.
Zu diesem
Okay.
Tag der Abrechnung.
The master examines every individual case, dealing personally with the talents entrusted by him. O solemn day of reckoning. So when he comes to look at your talents or your pounds,
So, wenn kommt, deine Talenten anzuschauen oder das Geld, die dich anvertraut
it's
hat,
the day of reckoning.
es ist der Tag der Abrechnung.
It's the great grand review
Es ist
we
der
read.
große und finale Untersuchung.
And
die
what
wir
does he
gelesen
do
haben.
in this time with you?
Und was tut er in dieser Zeit mit
Ask
dir?
questions.
Yeah,
Er
he
stellt dir Fragen.
asks a question and she says here he examines you,
So,
right?
stellt dir Fragen und es sagt hier, dass er dich untersucht.
Yes.
Amen?
So therefore, even in this final review,
Sogar in diesen finalen Untersuchungen,
there will be an examination going on.
es gibt dennoch eine Untersuchung, die da stattfindet.
So the Lord will just examine you now. Okay, you made use of the talents or not.
So, der Herr wird dich untersuchen, nur um zu sehen, ob du gut Gebrauch gemacht hast von diesen Talenten oder nicht.
I mean, everything's already decided, but
Es ist alles zwar bereits entschieden, aber
but he still goes through what is now written in the books and just
untersucht und geht dennoch durch das, was in die Büchern niedergeschrieben ist.
and then just would divide to you the portion of your reward.
Und dann wird er deine Belohnung, der dir zuteil ist, geben.
Okay, so and then he found them 10 times better,
Und er
right?
hat sie das 10-fach besser befunden.
Which is, for instance, the Miller's dream was 10 times brighter.
Das ist zum Beispiel in der Traum von Miller, also der Kasten würde das 10-fache heller.
Or this is what it says, the lettering comes 10 times the power of the midnight cry. Right?
In Whiteside, das Spätregen kommt mit der 10-fache Kraft des Mitternachtsrufs.
Okay. So therefore, I hope that we can now better understand Daniel chapter 1.
So, ich hoffe, dass wir jetzt Daniel Kapitel 1 besser verstehen
We
können.
saw that it started here at the Sunday
Wir
law.
haben gesehen, dass es hier am Sonntagsgesetz anfängt.
These 3 years of temple cleansing to temple cleansing.
Diese 3 Jahre von Tempelreinigung bis zur Tempelreinigung.
And also, at least at the moment, we think that the 10 days begin also here at the beginning.
Und für den Moment glauben wir jedenfalls, dass die 10 Tage fängen auch hier am Anfang an,
When you're tested based upon whether you would defile your temple or not.
wo du geprüft wirst, ob du nun mal deinen Tempel verunreinigen wirst oder nicht.
And at the end of 10 days, you know, the false meat is taken away and you receive now pulse.
Und am Ende von den 10 Tagen, also diesen falschen Fleisch oder diese Ernährung wird weggenommen und du erhältst Gemüse.
Yeah, so you get delivered here
Du wirst hier befreit
and you know have understanding of the vision.
und du hast Verständnis von der Vision.
And now you're brought before Nebuchadnezzar for the great grand review where he's now asking you these questions.
Und jetzt wirst du vor Nebukadnezar gebracht in diese finale und große Untersuchung, wo er dir diese Fragen stellt.
And this is this final examination, this final review, because a review is an examination.
Und das ist diese finale Untersuchung, diese finale eben Untersuchung ist eine Untersuchung.
And when you bear these searching questions, he will say, well done, enter
Und
a
wenn du
good and
diese
faithful servant.
durchforschende Fragen aushältst, dann wird er sagen, gut gemacht, treue und gute Diener, tritt hinein.
Okay. So, one second. So everybody could follow along.
So konnte jeder mitfolgen.
Okay, good. Then,
So do we mark standing before Melsa at the same point and standing before Nebuchadnezzar?
So markieren wir das Stehen vor Melzar zur selben Punkt wie vor Nebukadnezar.
I mean, Melzar, he observes you here these 10 days,
So Melzar, der untersucht dich oder schaut dich an diesen 10 Tagen.
and
It's marked, but
I mean-
it's the same as, the Bible's purposely putting these in two places because that's the pattern, right? So in Genesis 41, Joseph is brought out of the prison, at the end he's given a garment. The garment is the
the victory.
victory. It's where
1. Buch Mose 41, Josef kommt aus dem Gefängnis raus und ihm wird eine Gewand gegeben. Diese Gewand ist den Sieg. Das
okay.
markiert eben denselben Punkt.
But then at the end of that, once because at that point you stand before the kings and you give the prediction, it's talking about the end.
So,
Right?
say that again, Mark, please.
At the end of that point there, you're given a prediction of what's coming at the end.
So am Ende von diesem Punkt hier, du gibst eine Vorhersage dessen, was hier stattfindet.
And when that prediction comes true,
Und wenn
that's
das,
where it's 10 times brighter.
wenn das zutrifft, das markiert der Punkt, wo es das 10-fach heller ist.
I mean, as I understand it, this Melzar marks the end of the investigative judgment,
So wie ich das verstehe, Melzar
Yes.
markiert das Ende von der Untersuchungsgericht.
but Nebuchadnezzar marks the beginning of the final review of the executive judgment.
Nebukadnezar fängt the beginning of what? Sorry?
That's not clear.
No, that's not clear.
Okay,
The beginning of the final review, that's it.
Also am Anfang, Nebukadnezar markiert das Anfang von finale Untersuchung.
Melzar's marking the end of the investigative judgment for the first group.
So Melzar markiert das Ende von Untersuchungsgericht für die erste Gruppe.
Right, because that's what's marking, it's marking these 2 points, right?
Markiert
on the
diese
line.
2 Punkte.
Same as Joseph,
Dasselbe wie Josef ist.
because the investigative judgment is still going on there right till the end.
Weil der Untersuchungsgericht geht von hier den ganzen Weg entlang bis zur Ende.
Okay. So it's purposely putting these things in 2 places so you can see the structure.
Es markiert diese Sachen in 2 verschiedene Plätze mit Absicht, sodass du die Struktur darin erkennen kannst.
Because in Genesis 41, when he gets the garment the first time, right, he's now going to give a prediction before the end time.
So im 1. Buch Mose, wenn das erste Mal den Gewand hältst, er gibt eine Vorhersage, noch bevor das Ende kommt.
So it's two different things. It's true, but it's showing you 2 different points. The executive judgment's also where he gets this visions and dreams.
Also der Ausführung des Gerichtes ist auch, wo er diese Visionen und Träume erhält.
Because because it marks his
But
point.
then mark FR, like at the final review.
Aber das ist markiert an der finalen
No, it
Untersuchung.
doesn't matter. The final review's there, but the final review's also at the end of this little box.
Finale Untersuchung ist zwar hier, aber es ist auch hier. Nein,
Two different groups, that's what it's marked.
Zwei
It's
verschiedene
purposely
Gruppen
doing this so you can
markiert
see the
das.
structure.
So, das ist Absicht, sodass du die Struktur
And you're
darin
not to
erkennen kannst.
understand it from one story, you've got to bring them all together.
Und du kannst das nicht aus einer Geschichte oder ein Story verstehen, sondern du musst all diese verschiedenen Geschichten zusammenbringen, die darüber sprechen.
So if you bring Genesis 41 in,
So, 1. Buch Mose 41 dazu bringen.
you have the exact same truth, but you have a period between them because he has to give a prediction and the prediction has to come to pass.
Du hast denselben Wahrheit, aber es gibt eine Zeitperiode dazwischen, denn er muss zuerst die Vorhersage geben und danach die Vorhersage kommt zustande.
Okay, I mean, I will also look into this. I mean, Mark gave his understanding. It might be correct, but I will also.
You're correct in what you're saying, but it's only half a truth.
Also es ist nicht falsch, was Bruder Lorenz sagt, aber es ist noch nicht das Gesamtbild.
Yes, I mean, it's just here in verse 19. It speaks about that they stand now before the king.
Es ist
So
nur hier in Vers 19, das ist wieder in Daniel 1, dass die stehen vor der König.
and this standing before the king is basically this second time standing before the king. And
Yes, but
so, but we don't need to look into this now because we're so much over time. But yeah. But that's what I definitely would understand. One marks the end of the investigative judgment, the other the beginning of the executive judgment.
Also das ist, was ich jedenfalls verstehen werde. Der eine markiert das Ende vom Untersuchungsgericht, der andere der Anfang von Ausführung des Gerichtes.
And Mark gave his reasons to make a separation.
Also der Mark hat seine Gründe, einen Unterschied hier zu machen zwischen diesem Punkt und diesem Punkt.
I got pointed also in the seventh plague.
In der 7. Plage,
The executive judgment sort of begins at the beginning of it.
der Ausführungsgericht fängt zwar hier an, aber langsam,
But it's not until Christ returns that really the executive judgment is poured out.
aber es ist nicht bis Christus wiederkommt, bis der Ausführung des Gerichtes tatsächlich vollständig ausgegossen wird.
That's true.
Und das ist wohl wahr.
The question is whether Daniel represents one group or two groups. So if
Die
he's
Frage ist, ob Daniel nun mal ein oder zwei Gruppen darstellt.
Also it seems Joseph.
Das ist dasselbe wie Josef.
Okay, they're just representing God, they're a symbol of God's people. that's
Ein
going through
Symbol
this.
von Gottes Volk, die durch diesen Test hindurchgehen.
okay, we need to look at this again, and then we can maybe tomorrow find some solution for this.
Wir müssen dies nochmal anschauen.
Okay,
Zu einer Schlussfolgerung an diesem Punkt kommen.
then let's close for this evening.
Dann lass uns für heute Abend Schluss machen.